Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question. Not answer it quickly, but actually feel it. Have you ever, even once in your life, made a decision that was completely, entirely, undeniably your own? Not what your parents hoped for, not what your culture demanded, not what your friends expected, not what your religion prescribed, not what your fear permitted. A decision born purely from the deepest, most honest part of you. From something that existed before the world told you who to be. If you are struggling to find that moment, if you are searching and coming up with silence, then what you are about to hear may be the most important thing you have ever encountered. Because here is the truth that almost no one is willing to say out loud. Most human beings alive on this planet today are not free. They have never been free. And the most devastating part? Most of them will die without ever realizing it. From the very moment you arrived in this world, something began. Before you could speak, before you could think, before you could question, the shaping started. Your parents, with all their love, handed you their fears. Their unresolved wounds became your unconscious beliefs. Their unlived dreams became your unspoken obligations. They gave you a name, a religion, a nationality, a set of rules about what is good and what is bad, what is success and what is failure, who deserves love and who does not. And you accepted it all. Not because you were weak, but because you were a child, and children are designed to absorb. The mind of a child is like freshly poured cement. Everything that touches it leaves a mark. And by the time you were old enough to choose, the cement had already hardened. Then came school. And school, for all its promise of knowledge, was really a factory. A place where wild, curious, luminous little human beings were slowly taught to sit still, follow instructions, memorize answers, compete for grades, and above all, never, ever step too far outside the lines. The children who asked too many questions were called difficult. The ones who dreamed too vividly were called distracted. The ones who felt too deeply were told to grow up. And so you learned something far more powerful than mathematics or history. You learned that fitting in is survival. You learned that approval is oxygen. You learned that the most dangerous thing in the world is to be too different, too honest, too nakedly yourself. Now you are an adult. You have a job, perhaps. A relationship, maybe. A life that, from the outside, looks like freedom. You can go wherever you want, buy whatever you can afford, say whatever you please. You call this freedom. And yet, there's something restless in you, isn't there? Something that wakes up at 3 in the morning and whispers, "Is this really it? Is this really me?" That whisper is not anxiety. That whisper is the truth trying to find its way through. Think about the last time someone disagreed with you publicly and how your body tightened. Think about the last time you wanted to do something and immediately thought, "What will people say?" Think about the last time you swallowed what you truly felt because the room wasn't safe enough for your honesty. Think about how many choices you have made not because they were right for you, but because they were acceptable to others. This is not freedom. This is a very elaborate, very convincing, very comfortable prison. And the cruelest irony of this prison is that there are no walls you can see. There are no guards you can name. There are no chains you can point to. The prison is inside you. It has your voice. It thinks your thoughts. It wears your face. And it tells you every single day that it is you. There's an old story about a bird. This bird was born inside a cage. From the very first moment it opened its eyes, all it saw were metal bars and the small square of sky above. It learned to sing inside that cage. It learned to eat, to sleep, to dream inside that cage. And because it had never known anything else, it made a quite unconscious assumption that the cage was the sky, that those bars were simply the edges of the world. One day, the cage door was left open, but the bird did not fly away. It sat on its perch, looking at the open door, and felt only fear. Outside was unknown. Outside had no floor, no walls to give it definition, no familiar bars to make the world feel manageable. And so the bird stayed, not because it was locked in, but because freedom itself had become terrifying. This bird is not a metaphor for someone else. This bird is you. This bird is me. This bird is almost every human being who has ever lived a conditioned life long enough to mistake the conditioning for identity. But let us go deeper, because the cage of society and family is only the outer layer. There is a prison within the prison, and that inner prison is the mind itself. Notice, if you are willing, what happens inside your head on an ordinary day. Thoughts arrive one after another, relentless and uninvited. Worries about yesterday, anxieties about tomorrow, rehearsals of conversations that haven't happened, replays of moments that are long gone. The mind never stops. It never rests. It runs like a machine that has forgotten how to turn off. You believe you are thinking your thoughts. But have you ever stopped to wonder, are you the thinker, or are you simply the one watching the thoughts appear? The mind was meant to be a tool, a beautiful, extraordinary instrument for navigating life, solving problems, creating art, building meaning. But somewhere along the way, the servant became the master. The tool started running the house. And now most people are not living their lives. They're living inside their minds, watching their lives happen through the thick foggy glass of constant mental noise. When you are lost in thought, you are not here. You are somewhere in the past, reliving a pain you cannot release. Or you are somewhere in the future, rehearsing a catastrophe that may never arrive. The present moment, the only moment that is real, the only moment where life is actually happening, is the one moment most people almost never inhabit. This is why people can sit in paradise and feel nothing. This is why someone can be surrounded by people who love them and still feel utterly alone. This is why success, when it finally arrives, often feels hollow, because the person who worked so hard to get there was never actually present for any of it. And then there is fear, the great architect of unlived lives. Fear of failure, which keeps brilliant people from ever trying. Fear of loneliness, which keeps people in relationships that slowly extinguish them. Fear of rejection, which keeps authentic voices permanently silenced. Fear of being seen as strange, as too much, as not enough. Fear dressed up as practicality. Fear disguised as humility. Fear wearing the costume of responsibility. How many songs were never written because of fear? How many truths were swallowed for the sake of keeping the peace? How many people have spent decades in careers they despise, in lives that feel like costumes rather than skin, simply because the alternative, being genuinely, unapologetically themselves, felt too dangerous to attempt? Here is a paradox that will sit with you long after this moment. The thing most people fear most is not death. It is being truly seen, being truly known, being fully, honestly themselves, with no performance, no mask, no careful editing of their raw humanness. Because if they are truly seen and then rejected, there is nowhere left to hide. And so they hide first. They perform a version of themselves that is acceptable, manageable, lovable. And they call this living. But here is what no one told you. Here is what the school never taught, what the religion often buried, what the culture actively suppressed. You can be free. Not free in the shallow sense of doing whatever you want, going wherever you please, indulging every impulse without consequence. That is not freedom. That is just another kind of unconscious reaction, driven by desire instead of duty, but equally automatic, equally mechanical. True freedom is something far rarer and far more radical. True freedom is the moment you become aware enough to watch your conditioning without being controlled by it. It is the moment you can feel the pull of an old pattern, the urge to seek approval, the reflex to shrink yourself, the habit of silence when your truth demands to be spoken and you can pause. And in that pause, choose differently. This is what awareness does. This is the quiet revolution that happens when a human being stops being lived by their past and begins, perhaps for the first time, to actually live. Meditation is not an escape from life. It is a return to it. It is the practice of sitting still long enough to see that the voice in your head is not you, that your thoughts are weather passing through, they are not the sky, that beneath all the noise, beneath all the stories, beneath all the identities you have accumulated like layers of clothing against the cold, there's something that was never conditioned, something that was never afraid, something luminous and spacious and completely, inexplicably whole. The ancient teachers called it presence. They called it consciousness. They called it awareness. Call it whatever you like. But when you touch it, even for a moment, you will know that this is what you have been searching for in every relationship, every achievement, every distraction, every desperate attempt to feel okay. Self-observation is the beginning, not harsh self-criticism that is just the ego punishing itself, which is still the ego. Not analysis, that is just the mind trying to think its way out of a problem the mind created. Simply watching, simply noticing. When do I feel most contracted? What do I do when I am afraid? When I speak, am I speaking from my truth or from my fear of your reaction? When I make choices, who am I actually choosing for? These questions, lived with sincerely over time, will do something that no philosophy, no religion, no self-help book can do on its own. They will make you honest. And honesty, radical, courageous, ruthless honesty with yourself is the first door out of the cage. Presence is the next step. Coming back, again and again, to this moment. Not the story of this moment. The moment itself. The feeling of breathing. The sensation of being alive in a body, on this earth, right now. When you are truly present, the past cannot wound you and the future cannot frighten you, because in presence, only now exists. And now is always, always enough. Conscious living is choosing, again and again, to act from awareness rather than reaction, to speak from honesty rather than performance, to love from genuine desire rather than desperate need, to build a life that reflects who you actually are, not who you were told to be. This is not easy. It will cost you. Some people in your life may prefer the version of you that was easier to manage. Some relationships built on your smallness will not survive your growth. Some identities you have worn so long they feel like skin will have to be gently, painfully removed. But here is what waits on the other side of all of that discomfort. Yourself. The one who is always there, beneath the conditioning, beneath the performance, beneath the fear. The one who has been patiently, quietly waiting for you to come home. I want to leave you with one question. Not a question to answer right now. A question to carry. A question to live inside of for as long as it asks to stay. If nobody were watching, if there were no judgment, no expectation, no consequences, no one to impress and no one to disappoint, who would you become? What would you stop doing immediately? What would you start doing at once? What would you say that you have never said? What would you create, explore, release, become? What version of you has been waiting, just behind the performance, for permission to exist? That version of you is not a fantasy. It is not some idealized self you must build from nothing. It is the most real thing about you. It is what you were before the world taught you to be afraid of it. The cage was never locked. It was only ever a habit, a belief, a story you were handed before you were old enough to question it. The door is open. It has always been open. The only question that remains, and perhaps the most important question a human being can ever ask, is whether you are finally, truly, completely ready to fly. Freedom is not something anybody can be given. Freedom is something people take. and people are as free as they want to be.